I don't know if you've dealt with pain in your life, but I was dealing with it for years. So when it went
Oh,
away, it was like the craziest thing getting out of bed in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't feel anything wrong in my body. It was pretty wild.
welcome to The Mindful Trainer, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of athletes, coaches, trainers, and guides. I'm your host, Melanie Webb. And today we're talking about mobility training for pain. And more specifically, why so many strong, active people are still living with chronic discomfort, stiffness, or joint issues, even though they're doing all the right things. My guest today is Kyle Devero, a strength and mobility trainer. Kyle has over a decade of experience working with athletes, martial artists, and everyday active adults, and his expertise is deeply rooted in functional body training, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and an unwavering commitment to physical efficiency. He holds multiple advanced certifications, and he teaches weekly mobility classes while training jiu-jitsu almost daily, recently earning his brown belt under instructor Fabio Leopoldo in Ventura. In this episode, Kyle breaks down why stretching alone often isn't enough, how mobility training can reduce pain without sacrificing strength, and why getting older is not the only reason your body feels broken. In fact, age isn't a reason at all. We'll also hear Kyle's personal journey out of chronic pain and a powerful client story about reclaiming the simple ability to get on the floor and play with your kids. If you're active, motivated, and tired of accepting pain as the norm, this conversation is for you. Let's get going. Welcome to The Mindful Trainer. I'm your host, Melanie Webb, and today we're going to talk about mobility training for pain. My guest, Kyle Devero, is a strength and mobility trainer with over 10 years in the field who trains out of beautiful Ojai, California. His expertise comes from his extensive education in functional body training, his steady commitment to jiu-jitsu, and his personal dedication to physical efficiency. He holds multiple certifications, including an FRC, a certified mobility specialist, and an FRA, a certified functional range assessment specialist. He also has a few other certifications that he's going to be educating me on later in the show. While Kyle trains individuals of all ages and fitness levels, he specializes in training athletes and martial arts. Currently a purple belt, training under Fabio Leopoldo at Murumbai in Ventura, California, he practices almost daily and teaches weekly mobility classes. Kyle, welcome to the show.
How's it going, Melanie?
Great. You know, this is the first time I've hosted someone with an expertise in mobility or jiu-jitsu.
Nice.
So
Well,
I'm thrilled to learn from you.
I'm excited to be here. Well, there's one thing I need to update on my bio on my website because I did just get my brown belt in December from Fabio.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's fabulous. So tell us how that goes. What's next? What's after brown? And what is
So
involved?
it goes white, blue, purple, brown, and then black.
Okay. We all know what black belt means, I think.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, okay, we're going to talk about mobility today.
Cool.
I think when people hear mobility training, a lot of them may assume we're just talking about stretching. So, from your experience, what are people missing and why does pain stick around even when someone is lifting and exercising and stretching regularly?
Okay. So there could be a lot of reasons for this, but I find that if you're number one, if you're lifting, okay, and you're doing it for long periods of time, meaning you've been doing this for years, you've kind of found yourself doing the same patterns over and over and over again. So in this case, you're basically training the muscle tissue in their mid ranges. Whereas in mobility training, when you get into the deep stretches, even if you're just stretching, look, stretching's nice, it feels great, but the one thing that I find that people are missing when they're doing the stretching is number one, not holding the stretches for long enough. And number two is they're not creating the contractions required to build strength and length in the tissues and also to build strength in the muscle tissues as they're being shortened as well.
Okay, super interesting. And you have really firsthand personal experience with this.
Well, yeah.
Tell us your story.
So it was COVID. We had a lot of time on our hands and I was still working out. I was lifting, doing all the things that I thought I should be doing in order to stay in great physical shape. I was running a lot too. I love being active. Okay. So I love working out quite a bit, maybe almost too much, especially at that time when you're in the gym for like an hour and a half or 2 hours at a time during the day. But I came across Kin Stretch through social media. And at the time, like, I was in a lot of pain. Like, my hips were super tight. My lower back pain was excruciating. It was terrible. Like, there were times when I get out of bed, like I was a board sliding out of the bed just to every morning.
Oh.
I had shoulder issues. I had a anterior pelvic tilt, a lateral pelvic tilt. So one hip was higher than the other one shoulder was lower than the other one. So I was dealing with all kinds of stuff. So I saw this Kin Stretch stuff on social media and I started playing around with it. When you look at the videos online, you're kind of you think you know what you're doing, but you really don't. And then one day I was just like, you know what? We're stuck in this shutdown. I'm just going to get the certification. And then I got the certification. And from there, I was like, you know what? All I'm going to do from here on out is train mobility and do Ken stretch. So I did that. And in about, I would say 3 months, lower back pain was gone. My hips were a lot more flexible and mobile. My shoulder issues were gone. Um, and I don't know if you've dealt with pain in your life, but I was dealing with it for years. So when it went
Oh.
away, it was like the craziest thing getting out of bed in the morning, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't feel anything wrong in my body." It was pretty wild.
That is wild. That is wild, and I would relate to that a lot. I would say when I was, like, 30 years old, everything I had done leading up to 30 started to compile, right? And I would get out of bed,
Yeah,
and it was like I was like a creaky old tin woman or something, and I do remember realizing when I no longer felt like that. So I'm really excited to hear more because pain is something that we all experience it at some time or another, and some of us deal with it chronically, which I think really chips away at your well-being and your happiness also.
absolutely.
It's not just a physiological experience, it's like it begins to affect your mood and your relationships and your day-to-day. Walk us through that process step by step, like, what changed first, what stayed the same, and what surprised you the most about that?
Okay, so I think the biggest change I had to make was letting go of the standard model of training. Now, that doesn't mean I don't today train like, do the squats and bench presses and shoulder presses and all the stuff. I just do them with a little bit of a different intention. But that was, like, maybe the biggest thing, because it's like you're so used to doing it this way for so long that it's already an ingrained habit. So, I had to let go of that and build a whole 'nother habit. Now, as far as like the end range training and the joint specific stuff, I knew like once I got into these stretches, like let's say the 90-90 or the pigeon or the couch stretch, when I felt how tight my hips were and my quads were in these stretches and I started doing the contractions, and we go deeper into all that stuff too, if you want, but I knew that I was onto something. Like I knew like the way out is through this discomfort. It's through this pain that I'm dealing with as opposed to avoiding it.
That's very philosophical. The way is through, right? I love that
Exactly.
phrase. So if we could back up, I'm curious, the squats, the bench presses, the shoulder presses, were you constantly chasing like a personal best? Were you a low rep guy or a high rep guy? Like, all these, and you don't have to go into every specific detail about that, but I think that might be beneficial for people listening as well.
Absolutely. So I would change it up. Sometimes I would go low weight and do a lot of reps. Sometimes I would chase trying to squat and bench press as much as I could. Um, but I was definitely that guy who thought doing squats was like the ultimate exercise in the gym. So I tried to do those as much as I could. And that was probably
Mm.
there. It came to a point in time where it was probably wrecking me more than it was helping me.
Especially with that anterior and lateral pelvic
Oh
tilt.
yeah. I mean, there was a point I couldn't even tilt my pelvis. It was so stiff.
Oh, it just didn't move.
It just didn't move. Yeah.
And to listeners, I'm going to clarify for a second. The anterior pelvic tilt. Imagine somebody with, you might have heard the term lordosis or like a sway back, like that deep sway in the lower back is indicative of a pelvis that's tilted forward. Essentially,
Right.
that's what we're talking about here. And the lateral, like you already described, one hip is lower, which causes that shoulder to dip toward it. Were you doing jujitsu at the time,
I
or
was.
did that come later also?
I th When I started mobility training, I was a blue belt. Yeah.
I know just enough about jujitsu to know that your ability to be mobile is critical.
Yeah. A lot of the head instructors in the Kinstretch system, I can think of 2 of them. I think most of them train jujitsu, but I know for sure 2 or 3 of them are black belts. And when you get into some of these positions that we train in Kinstretch, they are very similar positions that you will utilize in jujitsu too. So it's a perfect complement to martial arts and jujitsu training.
I imagine if you're just tight and your hips don't move and you can't kneel on the floor, like you're not going to be successful at a sport like jujitsu.
Right. Exactly.
So you had some motivation. The pain was probably highly motivating. And then your desire to do better in this martial art, was that a motivation for you also? Could you see the difference between your body and your instructors, for example?
It helps out in a lot of ways. And I won't say it'll make you better at jujitsu. Like training more and more jujitsu will make you better at jujitsu, but it will keep you on the mats. It definitely mitigates injury. And what I found is that if I get caught in a certain submission or close to one, like for example, like the Americana, which is your shoulder externally rotated, or the Kimura, which is your shoulder internally rotated, being pushed beyond their end ranges, it helps to fight it off. It helps you acknowledge that it's there. You can kind of fight it off even more, as opposed to if I didn't train internal rotation of my shoulder or external rotation, I'd probably get caught pretty quick with it. It would hurt a lot more.
Great example, very specific. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Uh, do you wanna talk about Kinstretch? Because this
Sure.
is new to me. I've been in
Yeah.
the field for 25 years as a fitness trainer, and Kinstretch is new, so tell us more.
So Kinstretch, which is also functional range systems, it's a system designed by Dr. Andreo Spina. Never met him before, great guy. Definitely love hearing him talk about it because he's very knowledgeable, super smart dude. But in a nutshell, Kinstretch is a joint specific training system. So we're training our joints at their end ranges of motion. The introduction or the nuts and bolts of it are the CARs, which are the controlled articular rotations. And that is basically a daily CARs routine is basically moving each and every joint through their entire range of motion. It's kind of like a warm up, a daily warm up or a morning routine. But then you get deeper into it and you do the pails and rails exercises or the passive range holds, the passive range lift offs, the end range rotationals, the hovers, all the fun stuff. And just to give you an example, so when we train our joints at their end ranges, so let's work on the hip, right? The hip can externally rotate, internally rotate, adduct, abduct, flex, and extend, right? So what we would do is in order to build a stronger, more resilient joint, we want to create more range of motion. And to do that, we utilize concepts like pails and rails. So PAILS stands for passive angular isometric loading, and RAILS stands for regressive angular isometric loading. So what we would do is I would, to introduce like a hip flexion, pails and rails set. I usually have people sitting on their backs. You could do it standing up. There's a wide variety of ways you can do it. But to introduce, I usually have people on their backs and they have a strap. And what they'll do is they'll pull their leg to their end range of hip flexion, right? So when that happens, you'll find a deep stretch on those hamstrings. And what I'll have you do is you'll sit in the stretch for a couple minutes. And from there, I'll have you sink into a parasympathetic state by concentrating on your breathing. Long inhales in through the nose, holding at the top for a few seconds, and then even longer exhales through the mouth. This just allows the body to relax in the stretch. And then from there, we start to do the work, the contractions. So after the 2 minutes is up, what I'll have you do is taking a deep breath, bear down, I'll have you create some irradiation, which is just building tension throughout the entire body. That's our way of utilizing force in order to create some load for the joint space in a safe way. Okay, so the pales contraction is training the tissue in its length and form, which is is the hamstring, right where the hamstring meets the glute, all the connective tissue, right? So the first contraction will have you drive the foot through the strap, ramping up from 10% to your max safest effort. We'll do that for about 15 to 30 seconds. And then I'll have you taking another deep breath, create some irradiation, some intra-abdominal pressure, building some tension throughout the entire body. And then I'll have you lift the leg. So um, that's training the quads in their shortened position and all the connective tissue and the joint space. We usually do that for about 2 sets. And then depending on how well you handle the pails and rails, then we'll transition to like the holds, the lift offs, the in-range rotationals, and all that fun stuff. I hope that makes sense. I hope I did it justice.
It did to me, and I appreciate the visualization, and I hope everyone was able to follow that too. And what really stands out to me is the way you're using the breath to regulate the nervous system to allow the muscle action and joint action to do what you're trying to accomplish. Would you say that's
Exactly.
part of this? Okay. It sounds like you're cueing the person through this process because as we all know, like, I'm sure maybe we've held a stretch really long and there's discomfort involved,
Right.
and the body's instinct is to protect.
Exactly. So that's where the 2-minute breathing comes in because when you get into your end range, right, your stretch reflex goes off, your central nervous system's telling you to stop. Your body can't move any further. And that's when I start to cue the breathing. And that helps ease your body into the stretch. And then we can continue to do the work. And the pails and rails are utilized to create more range of motion in the joint space.
And how quickly can you see a change take place? Is it something like from the beginning of the session to the end? Do you see little micro changes, or is this something that takes place more gradually over time?
So think of it this way. So if you go to the gym, right, let's say you do some squats or you do some bench presses. When you're looking in the mirror, you're like, oh, my quads or my chest looks super jacked after doing those reps or whatever. The same thing you can say with the pails and rails and the in-range training. You're definitely going to feel it. And if you're new to it, you're probably going to feel a little sore tomorrow in places that you didn't even know existed. But it's very similar in the way as far as growth goes. It's not like you just do one day of bench presses, then, oh, my chest is where I want it to be, right? You get to continue to come back to it and keep training it over and over and over again in order to build more range of motion in the joint.
So repetitions over time
Correct. Yeah.
happening at this muscle cell level, essentially.
And the results are more internal as opposed to external. Now, granted, you are incorporating other muscles to help assist when you do the contractions, but it's more of an internal feeling more than anything.
So a person's ability to like interocept or you're probably also cueing them into recognizing the sensations?
Absolutely. It's more of a feeling, so you're gonna you'll feel better, you'll feel your movement's gonna feel a little different, more fluid. I'll get a lot of text messages from guys, especially, like, we'll do, like, a hip session. This has happened to me multiple times when I was training people at PKG on Saturday mornings. They'll go to the gym and they'll do some squats, and I'll get this text from a buddy and be like, "Dude, my squats felt so much more fluid, and I got so much more deep into them." It was the craziest thing.
Which is where they can make strength gains because now their muscle can
Exactly.
actually stretch in that contraction.
1000%.
The lights just went off.
Yeah.
Great.
So I tell
Cool.
people, if you're a lifter, if you like doing yoga, if you like doing whatever, jujitsu, or if you like walking, whatever it could be, or running, it's it's like the perfect complement to any of those physical activities.
And I can see why, going back to what you mentioned early on, like, you discovered this online, during the pandemic, but it sounds like you realized that an instructor was essential in order to really gain what this method had to offer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny when you're online, and I'm sure you feel the same way on the social media. When I see my feed, I think it looks like everybody knows about this stuff. And the reality is that not a whole lot of people, are aware of Constretch or have tried it before. It's just
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
like I said, I've been in this field 25 years post-college and haven't heard that term before. Although I learned something called active isolated stretch years ago, which is a little bit similar. This sounds so much more involved and advanced than that.
that's
Yeah.
very technical.
Yes, I just wanna drive this point home to listeners as well, and again, Kyle's gonna have to come back on the show so that we can talk about, like, the reality of being a fitness trainer in 2026 and or coach of any kind and being online, right? But the importance of getting yourself like, if you find something cool on social media that you wanna learn more about, go to the source, go to the instructor.
Absolutely.
Don't just immediately begin to apply what you see. There's a reason that we have dedicated our lives and our time to learning these things. And I can tell from the short amount of time we've talked about it that this is really involved.
It is, it's yeah. I mean, there's some things I just made a post yesterday, and I'm thinking to myself, if somebody did some of the things that I show, just went, to their gym or wherever, they might end up tweaking something.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more common than we think. I'm gonna segue from that, from tweaking something into like, let's go back to talking more about pain. And how I've heard this so many times. A lot of people blame pain on getting older. Like, this is just something that we have to accept. And in your work with clients, how often is pain actually tied to age versus their habits, their training mistakes, or ignoring mobility altogether?
Uh, it's like myself, pain was tied to improper training, running a lot, continually doing the same patterns over and over again. But now it's tied to even just sitting at a desk all day. People can find themselves in pain, discomfort because their bodies are just so used to sitting in this position, or if they're on their phone, their neck's constantly in pain as well. I'm 45 years old, and I can tell you right now, like, I see people all the time just making an excuse for it. Like, I'm 40 now. This is just how it is. This is how life is supposed to be, or something like. I think if you saw Kevin Hart's latest stand up, he goes into that actually, which is kind of funny. He's like, I'm 40
Ooh,
years old now. My body's breaking down. There's nothing I can do about it. Blah blah. But the reality is, like, there is something you can do about it, because my dad's 70 years old and he's on my training program. And if he's running around like a spring chicken, you trust me, anybody can do it.
that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
when parents will do your thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. Stick a pin in that one. Age is no excuse to live with pain. So, back to mobility training for pain. I would imagine it only really works if you stick with it. So, what does consistency look like in this kind of training regimen? And, like, not the perfect routine, but something that people can maintain long term.
Okay. So from my experience when I take on a new client, especially guys that don't wanna give up the gym, which is understandable because I was in the same boat. I was like, I didn't wanna give up the squats and the chest presses just because, I thought that was what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Consistency, especially with mobility training, you don't like, you can mix it up. You can still go to the gym and depending on where you are. Now, if you were in, like, severe pain, chronic pain, and you were lifting heavy and doing all those things, I'd probably be like, "Hey, maybe it's time to take a break from that and transition into this, and to help you overcome the pain first, and then you can go back to the traditional stuff." But consistency with it, it just is more or less just developing the habit and sticking to it like anything else. And especially with new people, I usually tell them, like, hey, if you can do 3 to 4 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes, you're winning because that will slowly develop into a habit to where you start to implement it into every day of the week for 30 to 45 minutes or to an hour or whatever it may be.
Great. Okay. It's as simple as that. 3 to 4
Yes.
times a week, 30, 45 minutes. Great. And then implementing it. And so they don't have to drop what else they're doing.
They don't.
Maybe make
I,
some little tweaks under Kyle's
yeah, exactly.
supervision.
Make some tweaks here and there. Maybe do half and half.
Yeah.
I try to bargain with them a little bit.
I bet there's some bargaining involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we like what we like and we gravitate towards what we've always done too. I think it's really hard to just make a cold switch like that without especially without a trusted instructor or coach by your side like you.
Right. Well, people like to sweat too. They like to jump up and down and do all these things, and I understand because I like to do those things too, and I
Yeah.
still do those things. But I think it's not like you have to just do a whole hour of this mobility stuff. You could simplify and, like I said, do 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But I think as long as you implement it, I mean, you're winning, and you'll see the results, and you'll see the positives as to why you're doing it or adding it to your training.
Yeah, I think that's important, like seeing little bits of progress as you go. So I would love to invite you to share a client story with us. You shared one with me that I could really relate to and that I've heard before. You had a client whose goal wasn't lifting heavier. It was actually as simple as being able to get down on the floor and play with his kids. So,
Yeah.
can you share more about that?
So I had a client. I have a client. He our first conversation, he mentioned a story about so he has 2 kids, and his daughter wanted to play with them on in the family room or on the floor doing whatever. And he's like, I can't play with you right now. And she responded with, "Why? Does your back hurt?" And it was just funny because kids are just so what intuitive, like they're listening. Because it's probably something he's just every day griping about with his wife or whatever, and she's just picking up on it. So we got in a conversation. He's like, "Listen, I can't, sometimes when I pick up my kids, my shoulders hurt, my lower back's in pain." And plus he's a rock climber too, so he wanted to get back to climbing at the climbing gym as well as climbing outside. So we've been working for together for almost 4 months now. Within a month or so, he was seeing results, but I would say within like 2 to 3 months, his back pain completely went away, and he was on the floor. He just sent me a picture of him holding both of his kids in both of his arms. He's
That's
doing well.
awesome.
Yeah.
And of course, being able to get down on the floor requires being able to get up off of the floor too,
Exactly.
with these 2 little loads.
Exactly.
I love it, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's one thing to be able to do what you wanna do in the gym, but when it comes right down to it, it's our everyday life and it's our quality of life, and it's those moments like that that I imagine that just, like, was like a dagger in his heart to hear his
Oh,
daughter
for
say that.
sure. For sure. And I mean, it's why we do what we do. Like that was like it's a huge win for him, but even for me, like that makes me feel good. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
change somebody.
In the way that really matters. Absolutely. That's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Kyle, as always on this show, the time just flies, and before I know it, it's time to close. So I am going to have you back on the show. Can you please tell us how our audience can connect with you to learn more?
Absolutely. So um, you can find me at kyledeveromobility.com. You can also find me on Instagram at kyle.mobility. Oh, I'm sorry, kyle.devero.mobility. And then YouTube at Kyle Devero Mobility.
Great. And I know you have a program as well. Tell us more about that.
So I do one-on-one training. I have clients I train through Zoom. I also have in-person clients. I also have an online program, which you can find all the details on my website. I
Cool.
offer a 6-week program. I also offer a 3-month program.
And all of those will be included in writing in the show notes for those of you listening. Kyle, thank you again for being on the Mindful Trainer today. I really enjoyed it.
Melanie, this is awesome. I appreciate you.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
This conversation with Kyle really enforces something that I care deeply about. And that's the idea that pain is not just physical. It affects how we move, how we show up for the people we love, how we're able to do our work, and how we experience our everyday lives. What really stands out to me is this: mobility training is about moving better. It's about creating strength at the edges of your movement and dedicating the time to care for your joints the same way you care about your muscles. We talked about how pain is often the result of habits, repetition, and ignored limitations, not age. And we heard a powerful reminder that consistency doesn't require perfection. Sometimes it's just 3 or 4 focus sessions a week, done with intention over time. If this episode resonated with you, especially if you're strong, active, but quietly dealing with pain, I hope it gives you permission to change things up a little, to get curious, and to seek guidance instead of pushing through discomfort all alone. As always, thank you for spending your time here with me on The Mindful Trainer. If you found this conversation valuable, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next time. And if you want to explore more conversations like this, make sure you're subscribed to The Mindful Trainer wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also visit webwell.com for training resources, outdoor-inspired wellness tools, and ways to work with me as you build your own body equity and resilience. The Mindful Trainer is the official podcast of WebWell. I'm your host, Melanie Webb. I'm also the founder and the master trainer at WebWell.